You're listening to the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.
And now, it's time for the show that breaks down the options market. From unusual activity alerts to market analysis, strategy overviews, listener questions, and much more. If it involves puts and calls, then our all-star panel will break it down. It's time to hit the option block with your host, Mark Longo from the Options Insider Media Group, and co-hosts Uncle Mike Tussaw from RCM Asset Management, Andrew the Rock Lobster Joe Vanazzi from OptionPit.com, and Mark the Greasy Meatball Sebastian from OptionPit.com. And now, get ready to hit the option block.
All right, that rockin' tune means it's time for a rockin' show. It's time for the option block, a.k.a. Bitcoin-palooza parade. My name is Mark Longo from the OptionsInsider.com, as well as, of course, from the ever-exciting Options Insider Radio Network. You guys know the drill. Find us wherever you find your favorite podcast programs, probably wherever you're listening to this right now. It could be iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, so on and so forth. If you like what you're listening to while you're there, feel free to head on over, leave a nice review. Maybe I'll give you some hint for some topics. Of course, 5 stars. Love the Mark. Love that Longo guy. Rock Lobster, not a huge fan. So I could see how you can maybe knock off a half a star for him. We understand. We understand how you do it. And of course, if you haven't done so already, make sure you grab the full network feed so you get all of our shows. We like this one. This one's fun, but we have a bunch of others that we do too, so make sure you're checking them out. And of course, follow us on the old socials at Options on pretty much most of the big platforms you guys like to use. I think the Options Insider on Facebook, for those of you out there slinging the finance on Facebook. And of course, you hardcores can always join us live every Monday and Thursday, 3 p.m. Central, 4 p.m. Eastern, via the Mixlers. That is MIXLR. The link's always there. In our social media, you guys can just grab it, set it once and forget it. Never changes. Always good, always fun. At least we hope so. So if you don't want to wait for the podcast, we got you covered there. And of course, however you listen, make sure you do hit us up, because we do actually like to hear from you guys on occasion, once or twice a month or so, something along those lines. Of course, I'm kidding. Hit us up. Many of you do, and we read the good ones here on the show. It's Monday. We're going to do some of that a little bit later. First, let me welcome on my cohorts, my partners in crime. Right now, it's partner. We got Mr. Uncle Mike from RCM Wealth Advisors. He was in studio last week. That was our biannual treat. Every 2 years, Uncle Mike swings it on down to the old city to see what the folks are up to. Then he heads out to the hinterlands again. Uncle Mike, how are things in the hinterlands, sir? Have you recovered from your trip to the big city?
I got to say, it was exhausting all the way down to Chicago, riding on a train, but nonetheless, it was always fun to come visit the Options Insider World Headquarters. It's always a pleasure.
And you cleaned me out of all my finest beer as well, sir. So well done for you on that front. Someone has to take the meatball's place in the studio, and you did an able job on that front. Speaking of the meatball, we just slandered him, so that must mean he is here. I do believe we are joined by the meatball himself, Mr. Mark Sebastian. Mr. Meatball, were your ears ringing, sir? We were just talking about you.
They were indeed. I know. I heard all the wonderful things you guys had to say about me. Thank you. I love you all too, and I'm really proud to represent this great group as senior leader of all Options Insider things.
Is that your title now? Is that I'll have to update your business card?
Yes, I am indeed that.
Senior leader of all Options Insider things. That's nice. I'm glad. I'll be nice to take a break here for a little while. I'm going to go on vacation for a few months, and you let me know how all that fun stuff goes. Meanwhile, I'm going to keep on rolling right on into the trading block.
It's time to break down the latest topics, trades, and trends in the world of options. It's time for the Trading Block.
All right, ladies and gents, welcome to the Trading Block, the portion of the show where we talk about what was trading. And yes, there was something trading other than Bitcoin. We'll get to all that in a little bit. But first, let's talk about what was moving and shaking in today's market activity. Not a heck of a lot, at least to end of the session here. Most of the major indices up slightly to modestly on the day, shall we say. The Dow, the laggard, up less than 0.25%. The S&P, kind of nice Goldilocks in the middle. They're up about 0.3%. And, of course, the tech-heavy Nasdaq, once again in the driver's seat in the vanguard, they're about 0.6%. And, of course, all this green means VIX cash to the downside. Actually, I think threatening where the meatball, close to where the meatball was predicting. Let's see how low it got. It closed right around the low, 936. So it didn't get any lower intraday. So 936 out there in VIX cash land. We shall see how the week progresses, which of our prognostications in the VIX land comes to pass. But let's start with Uncle Mike, sir. I know you've been recovering there from the big city, the lights, the sounds. It's overwhelming, I know. But that said, what was catching your eye in today's day of modest activity, sir?
Yeah, I know that you're going to want to talk about Bitcoin, so I won't steal your thunder on that one. I'll just tell you a brief story of how last night I really thought there was something wrong with my phone, because how could the CBOE website be down when probably the whole world would want to be looking to see what's going on with the Bitcoin futures? But it wasn't my phone; it was the website last night. I saw the tweet that went out on the news afterwards. But nonetheless, today was a day of technology and energy. And that we had some technology stocks going higher, at least with XLK. Apple was up almost 2% on the day. Oil is starting to come back up again. We have it around, showing it closed just under at 57.99 on the day. My beloved XLE knocking on the door of the 70 mark again. So with all that, there was not a lot of other movement throughout the marketplace. For the most part, I would say today was more of a meh day, at least with stocks anyway. Excited to hear the meatballs take on the VIX going down in the around 9.3 again. So excited to hear about that. But really, there was not a ton of movement. I kind of think that we're all kind of waiting around for, it seems like the market might be waiting around for the Fed announcement coming out this week, which I also think is going to be another meh, quite honestly. So all in all, not a whole lot happening, but excited to talk about Bitcoin here in a little bit.
I was going to say, if you're waiting for the Fed this week for your source of action, I don't know. I think you're going to be wildly disappointed. If that's where you're living for your action, I'm waiting for my Fed. Then yeah, I don't think you're going to get it there. But Mr. Meatball, what say you, sir? What about that VIX continuing to erode there, threatening the low nines? Perchance, shall we see an 8-handle this week, sir?
You know, this is options expiration week. That tends to be bullish. We've got really not a lot of news. I think you could see vol start to get bid middle of next week when we see some sort of, whether there's going to be a deal or not from the, out of Congress or how things move. That's going to be kind of important. So that'll be kind of interesting. The other thing that was really fascinating is Bitcoin futures today. We got lots to talk about with the BTC futures that traded today. That was the other thing. I think everybody just kind of had their eyes diverted from the market and was watching Bitcoin, and I can see why. Because Bitcoin. How about this? I mean, the market is currently, as it's set up, structurally designed for Bitcoin, the futures to trade at a premium to cash because of all the margining issues with the futures. So there is, I want to say, last I checked, a $1,200 spread between actual Bitcoin and the Bitcoin future, which is just nutty when you think about it.
I'm looking here. You're right. It has been just Bitcoin medium. I had my little guy's birthday party yesterday, and we couldn't. People were the night before. I was at a holiday party. People were talking to Bitcoin. People not even remotely connected to finance were approaching me to talk about Bitcoin. And yesterday at the party, it is inescapable. Maybe that is your contrarian indicator when it's reached that peak saturation point. that everyone just can't stop talking about it. But either way, it is inescapable. And yes, yesterday, we are living in a post-Bitcoin futures world. Listeners, yesterday, the 10th of November, is when the CBOE went live with their Bitcoin futures. There was a lot of hand-wringing, a lot of worry about this. You saw the price shoot up ahead of this announcement. A lot of people expecting once you finally had a liquid instrument that you could actually hit a bid on for some size, it might actually cut the wings out from under Bitcoin. And it actually wasn't the case. So it's kind of interesting. In fact, Ophir over there has been on the show a bunch of times. Mr. CML Viz has been putting out some great charts on this, and he just sent another one over to us. And it shows right when the Bitcoin futures opened, and where they ended up coming. And, there was a nice little sell-off there at first, and then we saw kind of a bit of a rally ho. So everyone who thought this is it, this is the moment when the big whales finally going to cut the legs out from Bitcoin, at least so far, hasn't happened. Now, as Mark mentioned, there is a little bit of a maybe fungibility issue between straight up old school Bitcoin, what we've got on this Gemini version now coming out of the CBOE. Next week, we're going to see the CME version, which is on the Bitcoin reference rate. So yet another product there that's aggregated from multiple venues. So you got an auction on one side, you got good old Coinbase variety on the other, you got the Bitcoin reference rate on another side. We don't even know what Nasdaq's planning in a couple of months out there. So there's going to be many different flavors, which I guess is kind of in keeping with the crypto thing, because there are hundreds of different cryptocurrencies out there, not more than like thousands. So there's pretty much everyone to each their own out there, and you're getting it right now. And in terms of getting it too, it seems like the numbers are pretty decent actually for CBOE. Let me see if I can pull up the actual end of day numbers. But as of their release this morning, the first day was actually pretty strong. We tweeted out something about this as well. They said total volume Sunday nights, so this is 5 p.m. Central to about 8:30 right on the opening, was about little over 3,001 contracts to be precise over there on CBOE land. They said 20 firms were participating in that. Excuse me, as of today, excuse me, got a bit of a cough here. As of this afternoon, about 12:30, about 3,600 or so contracts on the tape. Looks like by the end of the day here, I'm looking at the latest data from the CBOE page. You guys can do this yourselves. Head on over to the CBOE website. There's a big splash thing. You can't miss it on the homepage. CBOE Bitcoin Futures Now Trading. Click on that. That'll take you right to the latest volume numbers. And it looks like just a touch over 4,000, about 4,100 or so, lighting it up today with about 98% of that, nearly 4,000 of that in the front month. So not surprising there. People are kind of aggregated in that front month term there. They want to get that maximum bang for their buck. Not a lot of playing. They listed Jan, Feb, and March, if you're not paying attention, listeners. And so far, pretty much all Jan, all the time, at least there on the futures there. So, Mark, I know you got a lot of hardcores, a lot of wonks over there in the pit chat. Any of them dipping their toes in it? Did you guys dip your toes in it over there at good old Carmen Line? And what are your thoughts on this new era for the markets here?
Well, it was interesting to watch. With that kind of spread, that's just in super wide. But what I'll say is a lot of people don't realize how successful this launch was for CBOE. To put things in perspective, the first day of options trading for the CBOE in 1973, they did up a little over 900 contracts. The first day of VIX futures trading, they did 460. So the fact that it sounds like the day and overnight session totaled 8,000 contracts or something like that. That's a nice win, and I think it points towards something. They may have something really interesting and fascinating to keep track of, and that's kind of fascinating. So, we weren't dipping too much. Just for fun, I bought $50 worth of Bitcoin today.
$50,
just so that I know.
So what's that? That's a 20th of one contract.
Correct. Because I just wanted to see how it actually moved and priced, and the only way to do that is to have a couple of bucks in. And it was kind of fascinating to watch that thing trade. Interestingly, like as a percent Litecoin, LTC moved more than Bitcoin, and has been moving more than Bitcoin as a percent of its value. The one that's kind of weird. Everyone likes Ethereum except for apparently this CryptoKitties is completely tying up the system, and that's causing problems. So watch out for CryptoKitties.
That's just good advice for life, sir. I mean, I tell that to my little guy every day when he's going off to school. Watch out for those crypto kitties out there. If I can get the right handle, there we go. That's the right handle to mock you appropriately on Twitter, sir. But we have been. This is crazy stuff. I know it's a little bit out of left field for you, Uncle Mike. You said you were watching it last night as well. I'm getting a feeling it's not a core holding in the strategic night as of yet, but you never know when you get the options. You guys might start slinging. But what are your thoughts here on this brave new world here for Bitcoin?
No, like you in the same regard. Everyone and their uncle is asking me about Bitcoin, what they think of, what I think about it, what's going on with it. You can't escape Bitcoin in this. Not just the financial world, and pretty much everywhere. So my thoughts on it, I think it's going to, if anything, I would rather be a Bitcoin seller right now than a Bitcoin buyer. But with that being said, I tend to not play in this world. So I am going to be neither, just because of the fact that it's gone up, I believe, from a penny to 17,000 or whatever. That I'd have to bring up my screen to look to see what it is right now. But the fact that it's had that much movement since 2010, it's insanity. But with that, it would have been insanity back when it was 50% less at this point. So who am I to say that we have hit the top of Bitcoin by any means? I do think it's good that it is on a regulated exchange now. So if someone does want to play in this space, they will have the ability to trade futures through the CBOE, and then a week from now, the Merc, and then sometime next year, the Nasdaq, as they say. And I'm excited at the prospect of options coming out on this at some point in the future.
I'll be interested. When do you think they're going to get options? I think that'll be really. The only way to be safely short in this product for the time being is going to be put options once those get listed. I imagine those are going to be, it'll be like VIX weekly futures where the options far out exceed the volume in the actual future. It's this is nuts, and I can't wait until they list options. Those things are going to be insane.
Yeah, we've got.
I would agree. I would agree. And I agree with you, Mark. The only way that I would play in this space, me being the Bitcoin overall bear that I am, would be to, like I said, likely not buy a put, because the volatility on these things would be, buying a put would probably be similar to buying the underlying with how much vol would be in it. But I would likely buy a put spread in somewhere along those lines, probably a vertical put spread in that manner if it were to exist. But overall with Bitcoin, I think it's going to be a very exciting product to watch. But I can't say that I'm optimistic on a product that's primarily built for the use of drug dealers and prostitutes. Oh, wait, hold on a second. That could be our U.S. government currency I was talking about, too. But, never mind.
Uncle Mike slinging drug dealers and prostitutes. I guess that one beer you had in the studio last week really got to you. That's a whole new era here for Uncle Mike. Talking crypto. Next thing you know, he's talking drug dealers and prostitutes. But, it has been interesting to watch. And you're right. Kind of the irony of ironies was that the CBOE went down last night. And, the whole reason for being for these products, a lot of people have cited, is that we're finally going to see these things on a listed exchange that can handle the volume, that can do all this. And then, of course, we saw issues with Mt. Gox and Coinbase and others having all sorts of issues. And here we are finally on the CBOE. And, of course, they went – now the trading didn't go down. It should be clarified. It was pretty much the website that went down. But that's the front-facing portal for the CBOE to most of the world. So that alarmed a lot of people. Certainly doesn't build confidence when that's your launch face to the world. Here we are, world. We race to get out live early on the 10th ahead of everybody, and bam, your site goes down. So, yeah, the whole point of that was to build some confidence. Maybe not so, but still, the volume was there. So at the end of the day, it's the numbers that matter. And that's what's doing. Speaking of which, since everyone's got crypto on the brain and crypto futures on the brain, we're going to cheat. We're going to bump up our question from the mail block here to talk about a little bit of it now. And we're going to ask you guys a question. Simple question this week. Everyone's got one thing on their brain, so we thought we'd talk about that. So everyone's got Bitcoin fever. The first real quote-unquote futures launched yesterday at the time we wrote this on the CBOE. So question was simple. Are you going to trade them this week? He gave you 4 choices. Heck yes, hell no, I already traded them for the hardcores out there, or you're sticking with the Coinbases and others out there of the world. I got to say, it's only been up for not a few hours, and it's already people are piling in on this one. Go figure. People like their crypto. So let's go to Uncle Mike to play first. Uncle Mike, your vote, and then you kind of already gave us your vote. But how do you think our listeners are voting here? And the heck yes, hell no, already traded them, or I'm sticking with the Coinbases and the others out there.
I'm going to say that our audience has already traded them in one way, shape, or form. To mirror Mr. Sebastian, he bought $50 worth today, and I'm willing to bet that most of our audience has bought at least $50 worth at some point.
Interesting. So I'm at specifically for the future, so maybe a lot of them probably got in. I'll get you those numbers in a second. Mr. Meatball, where are you falling, sir?
I'm going to say, I'm going to say no.
Interesting. And you would be correct, sir. 59% saying hell no. They went the extra mile there.
Wow.
Hell no. 21% saying they're sticking with the old school, so the Coinbases and the rest of their ilk. 16% saying yes, heck yes, they are going to trade them this week. And 4% saying they already traded them. So a nice 20-odd% going to get into the mix there. So I guess that could be encouraging for the CBOE out there, because you don't know you hear a lot of talk, but what actual percentage of people are actually dipping their toes into the water is a little bit smaller number. So here we go. According to our audience, at least in the initial blush, we got all week to talk about this, of course. Initial blush, 20-odd% have already traded them or are planning to do so this week. A lot of people chiming in with thoughts. Lamont Maurice saying he only wants to hedge his cash position with these futures. So there you go. I guess he's got his Bitcoin cash position for what that's worth. Let's see. Good old Mark Brandt saying he can't wait to see. This is actually interesting. Excuse me. Can't wait to see the commitment of trader reports on these Bitcoin commercial shorts. He thinks it's going to be all banks. And yeah, now that we have futures, we're going to see some COT reports on the Bitcoin. That should be kind of interesting when all of that stuff is said and done. We've also got what we got here. T-Mal saying he doesn't know if we're at peak saturation here in the chat, but a lot of people were signing up and pressing that green button. He also finds it humorous, Mr. Sebastian, that you only have $50 worth of Bitcoin. So there you go. We got a lot of people interested in all things Bitcoin. As I thought, we can update this with some later numbers later on in the show. Meanwhile, though, we got to keep on rolling right on into the Odd Block.
It's time to break down the most interesting, unusual, and downright questionable options activity that's been identified by theoptionsinsider.com. It's time for the Odd Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Odd Block. This is indeed, I should say, the portion of the show. I'm distracted by all this crazy options activity that's on my tape here, but I'm going to kick things off as we like to do in the old Odd Block. Of course, the portion of the show we break down the weird, the wild, the wondrous, and sometimes break down just my coughing. Excuse me. A little bit of a cold catching up with me here these days. I like to kick things off as we are wont to do here on the old show in the Tesla realm, because outside of the Bitcoin furor, what's crazier most days than Tesla? Tesla closing today. Rally ho mode yet again, up about 4.5%, nearly $14, $329 almost out there in Tesla land. That's after getting as high. Getting as high as about a little bit more higher than that. About 329 was the actual 329.01 was the actual high, closing about a dime off the highs. So good day there for the old Tesla bulls. All you out there like this blast away at puts. I know from seeing your email all the time, you love to do that. So good day for you guys out there as well. Speaking of Tesla puts, a lot of action, a lot of love out there today. We talk about our old friends, the Jan 2019 50s. Nearly 200 hitting the tape again today, 177. So a total of nearly 35,000 open on this strike. These things are now down to a paltry 61 cents, 61 at 65 after trading in the 70-cent range. Today's rally kind of crushing them down a little bit. Also worth noting, about 200 of the pars lighting it up, nearly 19,000 open there. And you know what? Not to be outdone, because, 2019 50 strike, some people may say that's not far enough for me. I need more. I need more time but I still want that 50 strike. Well, guess what? You're getting it to the tune of the Jan 2020 50s. Yes, they are trading out there. There's 140 of the Jan 2020, 50 puts hitting the tape today. A total of 4,000 open on that strike as well. So if you were saying to yourself, the 2019 50 puts, not far enough out for my blood. I need a little bit more meat on that bone. There you go. Mr. Meatball, I know you were complaining about that. And here you go. Now you got your Jan 2020 50 puts lighting it up for nearly as many. So someone clearly has identified this 50 line, and they're just driving it all the way home here with hundreds of contracts across both strikes. You can tell us, Mr. Meatball, was this Carmen line?
It was not us, but it is fascinating that those keep trading. I'm telling you that it's related to something else. But this is one that we were watching, and it does look like Tesla looks like, it's on getting ready to kind of break out here. It's really had a nice run, and the term structure is really screwy. So I think it could have a nice couple of days here. We actually did look at this today, believe it or not. We looked at the DEES 29 332 calls, because DEES 29 heading in that week is the slowest week you can imagine. That's a good time to look at premium, and that was where we thought we saw some decent premium.
There you go. Your hardcore pit chatters loving themselves some Tesla, and apparently someone likes Jan 2020s now as well. They're not quite catching up to the Jan 2019 50 puts, but as they grow, we shall have to add them to our Tesla tracker list for more weird paper to keep an eye on. Speaking of weird paper, let's move on to our first legit name, legit victim out here. This is GameStop, ticker symbol GME, Game. Closing today, $19.07, off about 0.75% or so. This is the name that does about 9,000 contracts and change, doing a little more, almost 4x that actually, about almost 36,000 hitting the tape today, about almost 10 to 1 puts over calls. Of that 36,000, 21,000 and change coming on these Jan 20 puts. Someone liking themselves, the Jan 20 puts. Like I said, about 20,000 of them hitting the tape. Most of that in smaller lots of about anywhere down from a couple of hundred all the way up to about 800. Just block upon block upon block, 250, 300 some odd, 400 some odd, 500 some odd, 800 some odd, all throughout the day. Just kind of mostly lifting offers. Some of them coming in out of sequence, actually coming in through the offers on these things. Prices down to around $1.67 up to around $2 or so. Most of them going up in that range. So just someone had an axe to grind this strike and was willing to sit there and get it throughout the day. Only 10,000 contracts open on the strike, so clearly opening paper. Worth noting also as well, about 5,000 of the Jan 21 puts going up today. So between these two strikes, set about 36,000 contracts went up, about 26,000 of them coming in these two put strikes out here. So someone clearly has an axe to grind. Worth noting as well, a lot more OI on the Jan 21 puts, about 18, nearly 19,000 open. So there is a potential for someone to be doing a little rolling down, and 19 strike is the at-the-money strike right now from the 21. Still, it'd be kind of weird to roll from 21 to 20, and we didn't see any signs of that being a spread. It's like they both went up on the same side of the market there. And let's check out our old friend GameStop, see how it's been doing over the past year. This name, they sell games and a bunch of other things. They've actually had to migrate. A lot of their business was into the used game market. Of course, that's going away as digital continues to grow. So they've kind of been migrating into other things. If you've ever been past one of these stores recently, you've seen a bunch of tchotchkes when they sell a lot of other stuff. It's kind of pop culture related, I guess you can call it. So maybe, I guess that transition maybe hasn't been working out too well for them. It's kind of been a long, slow grind to the downside here for GameStop, starting the year about 26.5, and instead dropping about 7 handles or so throughout the course of the year, actually hitting down as low as 16 back about a month ago or so. So they're rallying up from that point, not quite as low there, but still not quite exactly rally ho mode here for the old GameStop. Mr. Meatball, let's kick things off here. What do you think? What do you think of GameStop? And then what do you think of these, some size love here for these puts? And also, third question, what do you think of the kind of funky execution, 300, 500, 800, kind of all the way up throughout the day?
Well, I'm going to say that the execution sounds like one guy trying to buy instead of using a broker to line up all of the line up the trade and get everything done at once. And I'll tell you, the GameStop's an interesting one. The trade-in stuff is kind of interesting there. The used game business is kind of interesting. And with Nintendo Switch blowing up, you'd think that they would be in a position to really do well. But, I'm wondering how well they're actually going to do with kind of everybody in the world marketing this Nintendo Switch and the other major games. The other problem is Star Wars Battlefront. I know you know this as the big gamer you are, Mark. I mean, Battlefront has any game been less well received than Star Wars Battlefront?
Not a lot of love for that one.
Time?
Yes, not a lot of love for that one out there.
And that's a real problem for a company like GameStop that is a lot more. People kind of differentiate. All right, what's the difference between like a GameStop and buying your games at Target? Well, if you're into like real gaming, computer gaming, stuff that really hardcore guys are into, those people are shopping at GameStop. They're not buying their stuff from Target. And if Battlefront is that bad, that's a real problem. Stop me if I'm telling tales outside of school, Mark.
There are no tales to be told, sir. But you're right. That has had a lot of problems. Of course, the publisher EA has taken on the chin for that one. A lot of the problems actually caused kind of by the publishers' kind of responses to places like GameStop and others siphoning a lot of their profits away in the used game market. And they're saying, hey, let's sell some of this stuff ourselves in these digital currencies and getting farther and farther afield with these kind of faux kind of like talking about Bitcoin earlier. If you're in the faux currency camp for Bitcoin, digital game publishers have been experimenting with this for a long time. There's actually a lot of interesting economic theory about how these different faux currencies can work and what the value of this one is versus that one. And it sounds like they got a little bit up the creek without a paddle with that Star Wars game. And as a result, people, not surprisingly, you try to milk them, they're going to get angry at you. And so we'll see how all that fall out. But yeah, it's been an interesting period of transition. GameStop, in many ways, perhaps the buggy whip manufacturer at the turn of a couple of centuries back, seeing how they can remake their business now that that used game market, it was so crazy of them for so long. They were just kind of it was like the dream of the old market maker, being the only guy in the crowd. You make your market as wide as you want, and they have to hit your bid and lift your offer. And they were just printing money on that for years. And now all of a sudden that business going away. It's going to be hard to supplant that with tchotchkes, but we'll see. We'll see if they can make that happen. Meanwhile, our friend here loading up on some puts. I'm guessing perhaps he is not the most optimistic of players out here. Let's move on to Nucor. This is good old Nucor Energy, not Nucor Energy, Nucor Corp. This is the steel and steel products manufacturer. I'm thinking of Nucor, which is, of course, the gas company. They are ticker symbol NUE, closing today about 61 and a quarter, up about $1 and change, nearly 2% on the day. This is the name that does about nearly 5,000 contracts a day. Today, doing a little over 4x, doing about 4x that, about 22,000 and change. We were just talking about all that longer term. Actually, not that long term. It's about Jan put love. Now we got to flip the script. Going to do a little Jan call love. I said they closed today at 61 and a quarter. Someone deciding today they like themselves some of these Jan 70s. So about $8.50 or so out of the money options here. Again, a lot of it, the total of about 11,000 and change. A lot of this also going up in smaller blocks. Not quite as small as the puts. Not seeing 200 lots. Mostly seeing 1,000 to about 2,800 lot going up throughout the day. And most of them around that price of 15 cents. Someone really liked these for 15 cents as the day went on. These are actually looking pretty good. 16 cents at 21. OI, only about 2,500 contracts. Actually, OI is less than that. OI is about 1,500 contracts. 2,500 open on the 65s. And so, yeah, opening paper. No matter which strike you're looking at, let's back at this has been an active chart out here in good old Nucor for the past year. Kind of starting the year off at about $66, getting as high as actually pretty much about that level. $66 was the high they hit again back in March, then kind of vacillating around for a while, hitting a low back in September of about 51 and change, and kind of bouncing around from those lows up to 60 again. It's kind of been all over the place year here for Nucor, and about the last month or so, it's kind of been in a big upward trend again, closing out, like I said, today, right around 61 and a quarter. So I don't know, Mr. Meatball, what do you think of our friend here piling in potentially to these Jan 70s, thinking this upward trend, this near-term upward trend in Nucor perhaps has got some legs to it, sir?
I mean, it's clear that's clearly the case here. This trade, I mean, maybe it's against some short stock, or it could be like a stock replacement trade. But I mean, it's hard to argue that this is anything but bullish.
Yeah, this guy liking himself that short-term chart. We shall see. Maybe we'll mark these in the to be watched category to come back to these in about a month or so and see how our friend is faring here. We know the near-term upside, it's a challenging road to hoe sometimes, and we shall see if this one plays out. Meanwhile, speaking of near-term upside, we got a bit of the old up and outs here to wrap us up here in Odd Block. This is Glu Mobile Inc., ticker symbol GLUU. This is our resident cheapie on the day here. Closing today, $4.68. Up about looks like about $0.50, about 12.5%. So not a bad day here for GLUU. If you're not familiar with them, they make and publish and market mobile games, surprisingly, given their name. So there. This is a name that does about 4,700 contracts a day. Today doing nearly 21,000, 75 to 1 calls over puts. So all the action, all the time in the calls, most of that action coming in this up and out with, I guess maybe you can call it a call. You want to call it a call kicker if it's a spread, or do you want to call it a call? Stupid. We shall see here. We'll debate that in a little bit. First off, though, we saw the March 4 half diagonal going up 4,839 times. The Jan's trading, both of these going up pretty much right in the middle of the old spread. Jan's trading for about 59 cents. The March trading for 61. Given that we blew through the 4 to a little bit north of the 4 half strike today, it has all the looks of a bit of a house money roll from Jan out to March. Doing it for a whopping 2 cents out there. So taking advantage of that. And then a little later on, actually about an hour later, we also saw the March 5 calls going up 5,000 times as well. And those going up for 48 cents. So that's a little bit of a weird one. If they decided to roll and then maybe an hour later thought the better of it and said, hey, maybe we want to cap this with a spread. If they did it that way, then it's a nice, about 46-cent credit that they just got for doing that. But it's also weird to do all that activity for a roll just to cap yourself off for $0.50. So potentially is stupid, but that would also be weird because then you're shelling out a lot of cash for that. So I'm going to lean on the spread side, even though perhaps some folks might argue against that. Let's look back at the year that's been here in Glu Mobile. This thing trading as low as about $1.90 back in about a year ago, about December of last year, and it's kind of been in a rally ho mode ever since. Trading by highs about $4.70 recently, then selling off and getting back there again today with obviously some good news here in Glu. Mr. Meatball, what are your thoughts on this? Obviously, the up and out we've seen before. It's more of the 5,000 lot kicker, I guess, is kind of the interesting part, where someone waiting an hour and then coming back in and saying, you know what, I think I want to spread this off, or maybe I want to add a stupid to it. Which way do you fall on that, A? And B, what are your thoughts on capping off your trade in such a fashion?
My guess is it's a spread. Maybe they got a little bit of move higher over that period of time and were kind of pleased with the level. And, for those of you who don't know, GLUU, their claim to fame is the Kim Kardashian game. So that is their number one game. So maybe it'll come out that they're the people behind CryptoKitties. And then if they're the people behind CryptoKitties, the stock is going to the moon. But otherwise, I think if you look at the price action today, it did get a nice little rally. So maybe somebody was trying to severely, to really lower their cost and play this thing moving somewhat higher. I mean, it was up 12.5% today. Yeah,
I can't fault this guy. And if he did do the spread that way, he's already sitting on a nice little credit. He did the whole thing for a 46-cent credit now if he did add that spread. So, can't fault the guy, even though it does seem a little weird coming in an hour later. I'm going to cap it off with this. I'm going to sell it now. Maybe he decided discretion, the better part of valor. And he didn't want that. He didn't want those fours. He wanted 4 halves. He wanted the 4.5 vertical instead. In which case, that's what he's got. And what we've got, of course, is some of your questions. It's Monday, so it's time for the mail block.
It's time to take your seat on the All-Star panel as we read your emails, tweets, Facebook messages, website comments, and much more. It's time for the Mail Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Mail Block. You guys know the drill. Questions, comments, tweets, live chats, emails, carrier pigeon, the whole 9 yards. Hit us up. Monday is our fun with questions day. I mentioned earlier about 59%, still hovering around that percentage there for the old Bitcoin in terms of folks saying, yeah, I'm not on board quite yet. We asked you guys last week, there's so much going on. There's so many products lining up to come out. Which one are you planning to trade? Not just this week. Obviously, there's only one choice for this week. But we said really in early 2018, how do you think you'll be trading Bitcoin if you are indeed so inclined? We gave you the choices of CBOE futures listing yesterday. The CME futures listing on the 18th. The Nasdaq futures listing sometime in hopefully Q2 of 2018. Or the old school Coinbases and whatnots. And 50% of you, a rousing half, chose the CBOE futures. I think perhaps a little bit of a recency bias with that. But nonetheless, your dreams came to fruition. Now you can trade it all you want. 28% coming in number 2 for the CME. 19% going old school. Only 3% for NASDAQ. Not surprising. That product hasn't really been outlined yet. By the way, I want to ask you guys this too. We had a little interesting debate on Friday's TWIFO. I want to see if I can pull up the results for that. We kind of put out a little flash poll during that show. This is a question we've been asked a couple of times, and I've heard arguments for it before. I put out a little flash poll. I'll see if I can find it. But we got asked again on TWIFO what we think this skew is going to look like when and if we get these Bitcoin options. And we gave them the choices of a heavy call skew, a heavy kind of more of an index type shape, or a smile, or something else on top of it. And here it is. And we had 53% coming in voting for a very hefty call premium, which is interesting. That's kind of the challenge. I can see an argument for all of these. 29% saying a smile, 12% saying more of an index type shape, so cheap vol for the calls, high vol for the puts, and 6% with others. And we got a bunch of other. Some people asking us about the July 10,000 puts in Bitcoin. Apparently, there's a crazy market for that. But that said, Uncle Mike, what are your thoughts? A, on the CBOE getting the pick, not surprising there. But B, I don't know, have you chimed in before, or maybe your thoughts have changed? When we do, because you were just asking about Bitcoin options as well, when we do see these Bitcoin options, how do you think that skew is going to look in the early days?
That's tough to tell. I would say that initially, I think we're going to have more vol to the put side initially, just because of the people that would be looking to hedge would probably be a little bit more sophisticated. And you'd think the sophisticated people may have some gains going already and may want to hedge them in some way, shape, or form. So I do think that it would be more to the put side initially. If it were more to the call side, then that would be an interesting skew to trade. That's for sure, if you wanted to have some type of upside on it. So, but I think initially it's going to be more to the put side.
I can see that. My first blush when I first started thinking about this about a month ago was that it would look more like an index, which would be to the put side. Because you're right, people want to get an exit. A lot of the other venues they trade this thing on have limits in terms of notional value or how much you can actually hit a bid on. So writing a nice covered call would be a nice outlet for them. But on the other hand, you got the zealots out there who are bidding this thing up. So I could see an argument maybe for a smile or some other funky things too. I think, Mark, you were leaning, smile about a week ago. Is that still where you fall on this, sir?
Yeah, I mean, I think it may have a little bit more skew on puts, but I think calls and puts will both be bid. This is gonna look a lot like Nasdaq stocks did in 1999. Think of gold when it got to, what did it get to? 20. Mike, what did gold get to back in like 12? When it got to like 2,500 or something like that, it got pretty close, right?
I'd have to look, but that sounds about right.
Yeah, I mean, remember like how crazy both sides of the curve were then? Yes. I think you'll see something similar to that in Bitcoin. Maybe a little bit more on puts, but I think both sides will be pretty well bid, with the ATS actually being the cheapest thing to own. It'll be a butterfly trader's dream.
Yeah, if it does have those ridiculous type skews analogous to the old school Apple, that's not the worst thing. We're not slamming that by any means. It certainly creates a lot of opportunities here, listeners. To think of, Mark mentioned butterflies, but any type of vertical would be a nice thing. Nice verticals, leg into those for nice, attractive levels. Butterflies, of course, we got the ratios; those are even more attractive. So anything vertical will look pretty good in those types of scenarios. Speaking of verticals, this is more diagonals, but let's get to this question here from. What we got here? Wiley Cat 9. I guess the other eight were spoken for. He took number 9. Hi, Mark. Great show. Keep up the good work. Well, thank you. I will take sole credit for this entire show. He says, I'm used to a diagonal call spread being buying a longer term call with a lower strike while selling a shorter term call with a higher strike. Much like a covered call. So that's kind of analogous to what we said before, like a fig leaf with a stocky placement, only he's using calls to do it instead. That's kind of what he's talking about here. He goes on to write, however, the TOS platform, so Thinkorswim, option scanner often generates a diagonal spread with buying the shorter leg long call while selling the longer term. So they're doing the opposite. He doesn't say if it's still one's above the other. Can you explain the difference between the two? Why is the TOS platform identifying selling the longer term while buying the shorter term as a high probability trade? I want to trust the TOS scanning result, but it seems kind of risky. I would love to hear your thoughts. Thanks. So he doesn't say exactly how the platform, and I don't have it up here, I can't check it myself right now, but he doesn't say how the platform, I'm assuming he means it's structured the way he was saying, which is longer term, a little bit lower, more strike call, and a higher strike call towards the near term. And that's the case. This is kind of an issue with a lot of, we were joking about the fig leaf earlier, a lot of options terms sometimes mean subjective things to different people. Like when I think of a diagonal calendar, I actually kind of think of it a lot of times kind of the other way, actually, which is more of a nearer term, lower strike call in the near term, and then a higher strike kind of farther out. But you do diagonals and calendars for a lot of different reasons. I think most people, when they think calendar, first off, they probably think same strike. They're just playing the same usually at the money, maybe out of the money strike, and usually they key off the longer term contract. So if you want to buy the calendar, you're buying the longer term one, you're selling the nearer term one, and that's kind of how people cue off that. When you get into the diagonals, though, things get funky. You're going to go down, you're going to go up. Which one are you keying off of then? That used to be a debate we used to have when we used to put up these kind of trades on the CBOE. You have to say which one's over at the end of the day, and that's how you would price it sometimes because these things get kind of wacky. So there is a little bit of a subjectivity to all of this, not a lot of hard and fast, unless you're talking like a straight up butterfly. And that's a thing. That's a thing that's quantifiable. Diagonals, a little bit more subjective. I can't speak to the platform. I haven't fired it up here in a little while. Uncle Mike, I know you sling a lot of toss over there. At least I know you guys do at RCM. I don't know. Maybe you can speak to the scanner and what it puts up here for it in terms of suggestions. And then also if you have thoughts on diagonals, because I know you do diagonals a little bit differently. It seems like everyone has their own kind of flavor of diagonals. What is your flavor of diagonals, sir?
Well, to answer the question in terms of the platform itself, I'm not familiar with that specific scanning tool. Being mostly an index type of guy, with which I am, I really don't need to do a lot of scanning. But in terms of the terminology of it, here's how I think is probably the simplest way to think of it. Vertical. If you're doing any type of a vertical spread, it means you have the same expiration, different strikes. Now, there's vertical credits, vertical debits, there's all sorts of different verticals, but they have the same expiration. Horizontal spread, same strike price. They can have different expirations. They can have a 1 month, 4 month, a 1 week, 3 week. They can have a 1 month, 2 year, whatever the case may be. But what makes a horizontal is that it has the same strike price. Diagonal is kind of a mixture between both of them, in that a diagonal, so long as it has a different strike price and a different expiration, that makes it a diagonal. So diagonals can mean a lot of different things. Typically, the way with which I do a diagonal would be along the lines of buying something longer term and selling a call option longer term, and then selling an out-of-the-money call option more near term. I have to say I have not done a lot of those recently. I'm kind of leaning more towards just selling a call spread instead of selling a call, or on a dip, just owning the long call, and then on a dip, perhaps selling a vertical put spread. So that's kind of how I like to look at it. And I think that's kind of a simple way of defining everything that a way to simplify the complex.
Yeah, it's like kind of like religion. Everyone has their own flavor, their own view on what exactly quantifies diagonal. I kind of, if I do diagonals, it's usually, as we mentioned before, that kind of like a synthetic covered call / fig leaf, which is you're doing a stock replacement and then you're doing more the near term. So that would kind of line up the way he's talking about it here. But you're right. I don't have a lot of use case for other diagonals most other times. Mr. Meatball, when you guys are doing your edumacation over there at the pit, do you clearly define what you consider to be a diagonal, or are you kind of free flowing like the winds?
Generally free flowing. I mean, the use case he discussed is kind of a stock replacement diagonal. But diagonals, they're like all option trades. They have a use and need for all types of different approaches, and that's all that really represents. And what the diagonal can allow you to do is you can have a short vertical. You can have a vertical for a credit that is long some vega, or you can have something the other way around. I've done diagonals where I'm long in the front and short in the back on ratios where I'm as an earnings plays. There's, to try and define an option trade, I always laugh. Whenever I see an email for like, learn the Muppet trade or learn the gluten-free cookie trade. Anytime someone has a named trade, I know it's garbage. And that's why I think like trying to kind of come up with, trying to put these types of trades in a single box is kind of silly.
I'm in on that gluten-free cookie trade, though. If you can get that, maybe a little bit of dairy-free too, then you got me. Then I'm hooked. A good question here, Wiley Cat. Like I said, we used to do a show daily on the TOS platform, so I was a lot more well-versed on all the scanners and tools back then. I haven't done that in a little while. So thanks to all the fun M&A going on in the options world. So I can't speak too much to the scanner. I'll have to fire it up and play along with it and see exactly why it's spitting out what you're talking about. But yeah, diagonals, kind of a bit of a subjective thing. If it works for you, go with it. And if you call it a diagonal, we won't hold it against you. All right, Taj Panasso. I like that name. It says, hi. Hello. Will there be options for Bitcoin once the futures are traded, or just the futures until there are tradable ETFs available? Excuse me. Well, Taj, we were kind of just discussing this earlier in the show. Right now, there are no announced plans for any options on any of these futures, but you have to see the writing on the wall. They're not just planning, no one's planning just to launch futures. Everyone, especially the CBOE, it's in their name for God's sakes, they want to bring the options to the table. And that's also what a lot of people like us here are really waiting for on the show, to really dive in whole. I mean, it seems almost crazy town to be just long these futures right now without any sort of hedging mechanisms or anything else like that you could do, let alone any way to spread against these things. And that's what options will bring to the table. So right now there are no plans. People ask us conservatively, I don't know, 5 times a day. when are there going to be options on Bitcoin? We just happened to bump yours up for the show here, but the answer is no one's announced it. No one knows. I'm conservatively saying myself, I think sometime by Q2 of 2018, I think we'll have something. If they can get the futures listed this fast, granted, futures a little bit of a different beast, but still, if they can get that rolling, clearly they want to get the options rolling too. So I don't think we're going to see a VIX style rollout a decade or so ago where we had the futures and then years later we saw the options. I think it's going to be a much faster turnaround. And if you can't wait, there are, some places now like Cantor is trying to get certify some Bitcoin options. Ledger X will match up their Bitcoin trades. So if you're a size institutional guy, not for the retail, unfortunately, they will match you. They got a CFTC approval up in July. So they're kind of more of like a posting board for your trades kind of thing. And they did do one for a 10,000 strike Bitcoin longer term till the end of 2018. Made a lot of headlines. Longest term Bitcoin options trade yet. So there are a few venues out there, but for the real stuff like we're talking now, be able to trade it on like the TOS platform, stuff like that, nothing, unfortunately, yet. All right, we got to keep on rolling into our final segment. It is time for Around the Block.
It's time to tell you what we'll be watching on our trading screens until the next episode. It's time for Around the Block.
All right, everybody, welcome to Around the Block. This is indeed the portion of the show where we break down what we're watching, keeping an eye on for the rest of this week into the old weekend. Earnings kind of slowing to a trickle, if you are indeed interested in that. We've got, Costco and Oracle after the bell on Thursday, so maybe a little bit of interest there. Good old Adobe. Pier 1, Mr. Meatball loves his retail. Pier 1 coming out after the bell on Wednesday. But other than that, it's not a heck of a lot. Uncle Mike mentioned the Fed. Maybe you can get your action there. Let's start with you, Mr. Meatball. What are you watching this week, sir, in addition to all things crypto?
Well, obviously, I've got my crypto kitty that I need to raise and make better and collect and trade. But outside of my crypto kitties, there's a Fed meeting this week that's at least mildly interesting. They're going to raise rates. It'll be interesting to see what their statement has to say and what the press conference is. That always can be interesting. Additionally, like you said, Costco is going to be, I think, worth it. Oracle's a huge company. That'll be worth kind of paying attention to. And then, I'm going to be watching these exchanges and how they trade. SMH was the semiconductor holder has had a very rough couple of weeks, and that was the main engine behind all this crypto stuff that we're talking about. So it's worth taking a look at whether there's something there. I've kind of played with it at Option Pit, but I may play with it some more. That and Villanova, my favorite group of crypto kitties, are now number one in the nation. That is the other thing I'm watching.
But you've been talking up these crypto kitties. I actually was looking them up while you talk. There's a blockchain game with these things. That is hilarious. And they're unique because of the blockchain. So you can actually get a kitty of your very own that is uniquely yours. Or you can go to their marketplace. I'm searching through their marketplace right now. You can buy some of these crypto kitties for fractions of a cent each. So there you go, listeners. You too, if your kid wants to get started early in trading in the marketplace, have them sling some crypto kitties. That's fantastic. All right, Mr. Uncle Mike, in addition to slinging the crypto kitties and watching your Fed, what else you got on the radar this week?
Yeah, we want to know, right? Meow.
Well, I'll tell you what, I got 2 cats of my own that my family makes me get that I tolerate, but they're the little kitties, so my kids do a good job taking care of them. So, I have enough cats in my house, quite honestly. So, but anyway, what I am looking at this week, looking forward to seeing the Fed. Perhaps they will raise rates, and it'll move the market a little bit. And by a little bit, maybe like 5 points in the S&P is kind of what I'm looking at for during the day. But you never know; it could be a little bit more. But for the most part, I don't think we're going to see a lot of action this week. And But the grind continues to go higher. We are actually just 17 pennies away from a new all-time high in SPY right now in the aftermarket trading.
Dad, you're so old. You actually owned a cat, not a crypto cat. What in the?
Wow!
You played with things? What is that?
I'm looking at this site right now. It is freaky. There's a section on siring. You want to sire your crypto kitty, you go there and do it. So. All sorts of creep going on there. Get your crypto kitties now, kids, for 0.049 cents as we're talking. All right. That music means we're done. That's a rich one, actually. Some of them are 0.0039 cents. So there you go. You get in there on the siring action on your crypto kitties. Meanwhile, we're going to wrap up here on the show before we get deeper into the crypto craziness. If you haven't voted, head on over at Options. Get your votes, and we'll talk about it later on the show this week on Thursday. And before we go, let's go back around the horn. Mr. Uncle Mike, we'll start with you. What is cooking in your neck of the woods, sir?
Hey, besides the crypto kitties, if you are interested in working with an advisor who's not afraid to do things a little bit different, however, I will, full disclosure, do not do anything with crypto kitties. Feel free to contact me at 312-212-3531 or shoot me an email at mtosaw@rcmfs.com.
You know, if this SKU thing takes off, Uncle Mike, I'm seeing a new fund for you and the Crypto Kitty Slinging Fund. There seems to be some action here. You could sire them and then sell them off. There's big money to be made here, sir. I'm seeing it. I see dollar signs here.
Sounds exciting.
It's something. I don't know if exciting is the word. Creepy. All sorts of words swing to mind. Speaking of creepy, Mr. Meatball, what's cooking in the land of the option pit?
Well, if you're interested in crypto kitties and you wanted the right advice, no, I'm kidding. You know, at Carmeline Capital, we are in the midst of launching our large cap equity replacement hedge fund. If you are a high net worth investor, feel free to reach out to me, Mark at Carmeline Capital. I'll be happy to talk to you about it. At Option Pit, our EasyVix course is going to start this Thursday. Keep an eye out for emails from us.
So equity replacement, are you doing the old, like we were talking about earlier, the diagonal? Is that what you guys are doing?
I'm going to be doing the wheel with the S&P with a hedge over the top. And it's a little more complex, but it's a smart wheel with a VIX hedge over the top of it.
I like it. Smart wheel. Now, if it's a smart strategy, I should be able to tell my Alexa to do it for me and get me a piece of that Carmen line, and then we'll be all set. Then it truly will be smart. Check it out over there. Option Pit for the education, or Carmen Lines with a K, listeners, for all the other fun stuff, including the Smart Wheel. Tell Alexa to get you in on the Smart Wheel fund. And we'll see you not next week, this Thursday, for more of the Option Block.
The preceding program was a production of the Options Insider Radio Network. For more quality options programs, visit www.theoptionsinsider.com or search for Options Insider Radio Network in your podcast provider of choice. Listeners can also access all of our programming through our mobile app, available in iTunes and on Google Play. Don't forget to follow along with your favorite programs and submit your own questions for the hosts at twitter.com/options, facebook.com/theoptionsinsider, or via questions at theoptionsinsider.com.